The raw chill bit into her, making her shiver as she cradled her 8-month belly. All she craved was a plate of food. But when Michael's eyes met hers, something he'd kept deeply locked away finally fractured. Throughout their lives, the entire city had simply overlooked Eleanor. Yet in that precise moment, he saw beyond a woman in need. He recognized an echo of his own past, a ghost he'd long forgotten. And that was the pivot point, because sometimes a simple act of compassion unearths the most profoundly buried truth of all, who we truly are. It was a soft, rainy Friday evening in Greenwich Village, New York. Inside the Gilded Spoon, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, candlelight danced on pristine tables. Michael Sterling, the titan behind one of the nation's leading real estate development firms, dined alone, as was his habit. Dressed in a flawlessly tailored suit, he scrolled through his phone, absently pushing around a dish that cost nearly $1,000, his appetite long gone. That's when the heavy oak door swung open. A young woman entered, utterly drenched, her hair plastered to her face, feet bare, and a prominent belly straining beneath a torn hoodie. The maître d' tried to intervene, but Eleanor was already standing before Michael's table. "Excuse me, sir, is there anything left you won't be finishing?" she asked, her voice thick with raw emotion. Michael lifted his eyes. He didn't just see the dirt or the cold, he saw her eyes. And he hesitated. A profound silence fell over the dining room. Someone whispered disdainfully, but Michael didn't hear it. "Please, sit down," he said, and the world seemed to hold its breath for a second. Eleanor paused, then slowly took the seat. Her wet clothes clung to her slender frame, and her belly felt heavier than usual. I'm really dirty," she murmured, glancing around, feeling the stares pierce her skin like sharp needles. "You're pregnant and hungry. None of this is your fault," Michael replied, pulling up a chair beside her. The waiter approached, visibly uncomfortable, but Michael spoke clearly. "Another plate. And a fresh orange juice. Very sweet." Eleanor thanked him in quiet gratitude. When the food arrived, she began to eat slowly, with an almost sacred reverence. Each mouthful was a blessed reprieve, a fleeting memory of times when she still felt truly human. "How long have you been living on the streets?" he inquired. "About 2 months. Ever since I lost my job." "And the baby's father?" She lowered her eyes. "He vanished when he found out I was pregnant. Said he wouldn't support a homeless woman's child." Michael took a deep breath. Something in those words stirred him in an unaccustomed way. It wasn't pity. It was something else, something long forgotten. "Do you have family?" he pressed. Eleanor shook her head. "The woman who raised me, Mrs. Davison, she passed away 3 years ago. She was the only person who ever called me daughter, even though I wasn't by blood." Michael observed her more closely now. The cadence of her voice, the delicate features of her face, even the subtle mark on her neck. "And your full name?" he asked, attempting to sound casual. "Eleanor Davies. At least, that's what I was registered as." Michael froze. The same surname as the nanny who had cared for his sister when she was very small, the sister who had vanished when she was just 2 years old. "Do you remember where you came from? Where you were born?" Eleanor shook her head. "Mrs. Davison said she found me in a hospital, abandoned. I never knew anything more." It was then that everything began to unravel. For her, hunger was merely another chapter. For him, it was the genesis of a truth buried for 2 decades. Before this all began, Eleanor harbored a simple dream: to work, pay a modest rent, calmly prepare her baby's layette, perhaps even buy a colorful dresser for the tiny clothes. She worked as a cleaning assistant at a local vet clinic. She arrived early, swept, washed, organized. She never complained. The owners liked her, and clients barely noticed her presence. But she noticed everything, and she dreamed of advancing there. In the early stages of her pregnancy, she concealed her belly beneath loose uniforms, but by 5 months, it became impossible to hide. Her boss called her in for a talk. "You're excellent, Eleanor, but this is a sensitive environment. Pregnant people disrupt the workflow." She tried to argue, said she could still manage, that she just needed the job a little longer. Don't take it personally, but we have to consider team efficiency. She was dismissed on the spot. She left with a brown envelope and a painful lump in her throat. With her severance pay, she rented a tiny room at the back of a house. The place was stuffy, windowless, but it had a mattress and a small stove. It seemed sufficient. Within 2 weeks, she was robbed inside her own room. They took the meager possessions she had, her phone, clothes, and what little money remained. The landlady, fearing trouble, asked her to leave. Pregnant and with no lock? You'll bring bad luck here. Eleanor began sleeping at the city bus terminal. She tried to secure a spot in shelters, but all refused her because of her pregnancy. We don't have the facilities for pregnant women. Try somewhere else, they consistently told her. Always somewhere else, always no one. She resorted to begging for food at farmers' markets, then bars, then any street corner. Even so, she clung to the belief that the baby's father might reappear, a young man from her old neighborhood whom she'd met when she still had a home and friends. He had professed his love, but he vanished as quickly as he promised to stay. The first time Eleanor slept outdoors was in a small park near the downtown hospital. She lay with her belly facing upwards, trying to feel if the baby was still moving. Everything's okay in there, right? Mommy will figure it out, but each passing day made it harder to genuinely believe that phrase. And she still thought she could fix everything. The rain that dawned showed no mercy. Eleanor huddled under the awning of a closed pharmacy, curled up, her soaked hoodie clinging to her skin. Her torn jeans allowed the icy wind to cut at her skin. Her feet were swollen, her ankles ached with a dull throb. Her belly weighed as if she carried not a baby, but an entire universe. Beside her, a wet, discarded blanket. Someone had tossed it in the trash hours earlier. She couldn't recall the last time she had eaten something warm. 2 days prior, she had shared a piece of moldy bread with a silent old man who lived on the sidewalk of Elm Street. He had been coughing blood. He hadn't reappeared. That night, Eleanor cried, but it wasn't a desperate, loud cry. It was an almost soundless, stifled sob. Because on the streets, crying loudly was dangerous. It revealed weakness, and weakness was an open invitation to be attacked. She spoke softly to her belly. "I'm sorry, my love. Mommy couldn't get anything today, but tomorrow will be different, I promise." Across the street, restaurant lights glowed invitingly. Couples clinked expensive glasses. Laughter echoed softly. Ambient music drifted on the breeze. Napkins were folded like delicate flowers. She walked across, determined. First, she tried the bakery on the corner. She asked for stale bread. The attendant claimed they had none. A blatant lie. She'd just seen a bag of leftovers being tossed out. Then she attempted a chic French bistro. A well-dressed woman looked her up and down with disdain and said, "You'll scare away our customers. Move away from the window." On the third attempt, a deli threatened her with security. On the fourth, they simply ignored her as if she were utterly invisible. Each no felt like a direct punch to her chest. But the worst of all wasn't the hunger, nor the cold, nor the physical pain. It was not being seen. People averted their gaze, pretended to be on their phones, crossed the street to avoid her, as if Eleanor were a shadow, a human blur that tainted the wealthy landscape. Around 9 p.m. she sat on the curb near an elegant Italian restaurant. She peered inside. Chandeliers sparkled, crystal glasses gleamed, waiters moved gracefully in white gloves, and a man, alone, engrossed in his phone, pushing his food around as if he tasted nothing. Eleanor hesitated. She felt the baby move within her. That was a sign. She stood, crossed the street slowly, her heart pounding, her breath shallow. She pushed open the restaurant door. The maitre d' walked toward her with a sharp, judgmental stare. But Eleanor spoke first. "Excuse me, sir, is there anything left you won't be finishing?" And that's when everything froze. People fell silent. An old man muttered, "How preposterous." A woman whispered, "This is a scam." Another man mumbled, "She's not even really pregnant." But the man at the table, the one with the lost gaze, stared at her. And he didn't see a homeless woman. He saw something in her eyes that he recognized without understanding why. "Please sit down," he said, pulling up the chair beside her. Eleanor thought she had misheard, but no. "Waiter, another plate, and a juice. Very sweet." And in that instant, in that place of opulence and arrogance, someone finally saw Eleanor as a human being. Have you ever felt invisible? Like you're screaming inside, but no one seems to notice? If this scene gave you a lump in your throat too, leave a yes in the comments. Just so I know you're here, that this story is touching you as it touched me. Inside Michael's grand townhouse, the only sound was the steady drum of rain against the expansive windows. Eleanor held the teacup with both hands, trying to absorb the warmth. She wore a loose shirt he had lent her. Her hair, still damp, fell softly over her shoulders. Her timid gaze alternated between suspicion and profound gratitude. Michael observed. There was something in her expression, not just the obvious suffering, but a deep, untouched dignity, like someone who still holds onto their shattered pieces with fierce pride. "You don't need to thank me, Eleanor," he said. "Helping you. Perhaps it's helping me too." She nodded in silent acknowledgement. After a while, he broke the delicate tension. "May I ask you something more personal?" "Of course," she replied softly. "Do you have any birthmarks? Any small scars from when you were a baby?" Eleanor seemed taken aback by the question. "Yes, I do. A strange mark on my neck. It looks like a half moon. I've had it since I was little." Michael held his breath. His sister. She had disappeared when she was just 2 years old, and she also had a mark on her neck. Not a half moon, but something remarkably similar. He looked at Eleanor for a longer moment. It wasn't just her skin tone, nor her eyes. It was the feeling, as if he was standing before someone his body instinctively recognized, even if his mind couldn't yet grasp how. The very next day, he scheduled a comprehensive examination for Eleanor at a reputable hospital. He claimed it was out of concern for the baby, but he also discreetly requested genetic tests. He needed to know. He needed to dispel the doubt or confront the truth. As he drove to the clinic, Eleanor gently caressed her belly, whispering internally, "Is this where we start over?" Michael gripped the steering wheel tightly. He didn't know if it was mere coincidence, but for the first time in years, he desperately wanted to believe it wasn't just chance. On her first night sleeping under a real roof, Eleanor couldn't close her eyes, not out of fear, but because the profound silence of the house was almost deafening. Lying in clean sheets, enveloped by the gentle scent of lavender, she kept her hand on her belly, feeling little Aurora moving more than usual. It was as if the baby girl was also surprised by this sudden comfort, or perhaps grateful. In the next room, Michael paced back and forth. He rummaged through old photographs. Some were yellowed with the passage of time. In one, he was 6 years old, holding a tiny blonde girl in diapers who laughed brightly at the camera. On her neck, the unmistakable mark. He zoomed in on her face, and then looked back at Eleanor, who had been asleep on the sofa hours earlier. The resemblance was uncanny, but what if it was just his imagination? A cruel twist of fate. The following day, they went to the hospital. The prenatal care was thorough and meticulous. Eleanor was healthy, despite the period of malnutrition. The baby, by some miracle, was too. "She's a strong one, that little girl," the obstetrician remarked warmly. Outside, Michael discreetly filled out the paperwork for the DNA test. He requested total confidentiality. When he handed over the form, his hands trembled almost imperceptibly. On the drive back, the silence between them was comfortable, unspoken. No questions, no answers. Just the soft hum of the engine and the gentle rain on the windshield. In the spacious kitchen of the townhouse, Eleanor prepared a simple meal of rice and eggs with an almost childlike joy. "You know how to cook?" he asked, surprised. "I learned from Mrs. Davison. She used to say that anyone who can make fluffy rice will never starve." Michael smiled, a genuine, full smile he hadn't worn in ages. As she washed the dishes, humming a soft tune, he noticed something new. Her presence filled the entire house. A space that was once merely walls and glass now seemed to breathe, alive with her quiet energy. That night, Eleanor slept soundly, for the first time in a very long time without any fear, and Michael, for the first time in years, felt he was exactly in the right place, with the right person, even without fully understanding what that meant yet. The subsequent days blurred into a warm, almost improbable dream. Eleanor helped wherever she could, washing dishes, folding laundry, tending to the plants in the backyard, with a delicate touch Michael hadn't witnessed in years. She did everything with a certain ritualistic care, as if each small gesture was tangible proof that she was truly alive, and finally truly safe. But even amidst the smiles, both carried unspoken silences. At night, Eleanor would lie awake, caught in a loop of thought. Why did he take me in? What did he see in me that no one else ever did? And she felt a profound fear. Fear of growing too attached, of it all ending abruptly, as everything always had. Michael, meanwhile, was battling a different internal war, the fervent desire to believe. The almost insane possibility that this woman, who had appeared out of nowhere, was his long-lost sister. One afternoon, Eleanor was wearing a loose-necked shirt, and as she bent down, the familiar mark on her neck was exposed. Michael held his breath. "That mark? Does it look like a half-moon?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. She chuckled softly. "People have told me it does, but Mrs. Davison used to say it was just a sign that I was special." He swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. In his study, Michael opened the old family scrapbook. He found an ancient file on his sister's disappearance, Marina Sterling. She was only 2 years old when she vanished without a trace. Several theories had been proposed: kidnapping, the nanny fleeing, sheer negligence. They never found definitive answers. His family was never the same again. That afternoon, the phone rang, startling him. "Mr. Sterling, this is the lab. The test results are ready." His heart pounded with an urgent rhythm. "Can you email them to me?" he asked, trying desperately to sound composed. "Of course, sir, but it would be better if you came in person. There are details you might want to hear directly from the doctor." Michael hung up the phone and stood motionless in the center of the room. The world seemed to shrink around him. Reality, stark and undeniable, felt closer than ever. In the hallway, Eleanor appeared with a neatly folded blanket and a gentle, questioning smile. "It's getting chilly. I thought you might want this." He looked at her, still unsure of what to do, but one thing was terrifyingly clear. Whatever was revealed the next day would irreversibly change everything between them. The doctor's office was hushed, adorned with calming landscape paintings and smelling faintly of expensive disinfectant. Michael couldn't recall the last time his hands had felt so icy cold. Eleanor was beside him, lightly pressing her belly, her nervousness palpable, sensing the weight of something she didn't yet understand. The doctor entered, a file held carefully in his hands. His expression was serious, yet serene. "Mr. Sterling, Eleanor, the tests have unequivocally confirmed genetic compatibility. You share the same DNA to the degree of full siblings." Michael closed his eyes, the room seeming to spin violently around him. Eleanor stared at him, utterly bewildered. "Siblings?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. "What do you mean?" Michael took a moment, struggling to find the right words. "Eleanor, my sister, Marina, disappeared when she was 2 years old. We had a nanny named Davies, the same surname you carry. She vanished with you one afternoon. My parents never truly recovered, and I never ever stopped searching." Eleanor took a step back, shaking her head. "No, that's not possible. Mrs. Davison raised me as her daughter. She said she found me in a hospital. Perhaps she said that to protect you, or to conceal what she did." Eleanor swayed, then slowly sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "So, all this, it wasn't by chance after all." Michael knelt before her, his voice thick with emotion. "No, it was destiny." She began to cry. not tears of sorrow, but of a strange, profound peace. As if, suddenly, a missing piece within her had finally clicked into place. That very night, Eleanor began to feel contractions. Michael rushed her to the hospital. On the way, they exchanged brief, poignant phrases. "Everything will be all right," he reassured her. "What if it isn't?" she asked, her eyes glistening with tears. "You won't go through anything alone, ever again." Hours later, amidst cries, sweat, and whispered prayers, a baby girl was born. Aurora. The name had already been chosen, long before any tests were even considered. Because she was precisely that, a new dawn, a fresh beginning after the darkest of nights. When the doctor gently placed the tiny baby in Eleanor's arms, she wept unashamedly, tears streaming down her face. She's perfect." Michael looked at the newborn girl and saw the same delicate mark on her neck. A half-moon, like his sister, like her mother. He carefully took Aurora into his arms, his hands trembling with emotion. "Hi, Aurora, I'm your uncle, and I promise to protect you forever." Eleanor, still breathless from the delivery, looked at him, her voice a soft whisper. "Michael, you gave me back everything life took away, even who I truly was." He smiled. For the first time, a complete, unburdened smile. "And you gave me something money could never buy. Meaning." Outside the glass of the nursery, the nurse meticulously hung a small card. Aurora Davies Sterling, 6.8 lebies. A miracle born of the improbable. A few weeks later, Michael's sprawling townhouse no longer felt the same. It wasn't the furniture that had changed. It was the sounds. Eleanor's soft laughter, Aurora's tiny coos and gentle cries, the comforting aroma of fresh coffee brewing in the morning, the way the sunlight filtered differently through the windows. Eleanor was undeniably stronger. There was a newfound quality in her gaze, a calm, mature glow, like someone who had survived the most devastating shipwreck, and was now steadily building something beautiful and resilient on the distant shore. Sitting on the plush sofa with her daughter peacefully asleep in her lap, she said, "Michael, I spent my entire life thinking I was nobody, that I was disposable, but everything changed when someone finally saw me." He smiled gently. "You weren't just seen, you were found." Eleanor tenderly caressed Aurora's forehead. "I'll raise her knowing that she's never too small or insignificant, that she has immense worth, even when the world tries to tell her otherwise." Michael nodded, a profound understanding passing between them. He picked up a framed picture from the sideboard and handed it to her. It was the old photograph. The two of them, still children, in a sun-dappled garden. "Remember this?" he asked softly. She gazed at the image for a long, quiet moment. "Not yet, but something deep inside me remembers." And perhaps that is the most profound truth of all. Because Eleanor's story isn't just about siblings reuniting, it's about reuniting with one's own lost identity, with inherent dignity, with a love that transcends titles, surnames, or bank accounts. And perhaps the powerful lesson Eleanor learned is one that speaks directly to you, that no matter how invisible you might feel, someone, somewhere, will still see you exactly as you deserve to be seen, because sometimes the soul just desperately needs a chance to breathe again. And because some stories, the ones that leave the deepest, most indelible marks, are born precisely from the place where the world mistakenly believed there was only an end. If this story touched you in some way, if at any point you saw yourself in Eleanor's profound loneliness or Michael's deep emptiness, please hit the like button. It's the simplest way to tell me that it was worth telling this story. And tell me in the comments, from which city or country are you watching? I read every single one, and it's always a precious gift to know who is on the other side of the screen. If you truly believe in the transformative power of stories like this, subscribe to the channel. We are just getting started on this journey. Every single subscription is the vital fuel that allows us to continue this mission. And don't leave just yet. Choose one of the 2 stories I've left on the screen for you to watch next. I'll see you in the next video.